What's up, guys, and welcome to the Rebalance podcast, where we dive into topics that matter most when it comes to overcoming struggles, injuries, and finding balance in your life. Everybody's idea of balance is that bit different, so my goal is to give you different perspectives, practical tips, as well as expert insights into what it means to live a balanced life. My name is Robbie Cassidy. I'm a physiotherapist and a health coach, and I've been helping people reignite their love for challenge, overcome their fear, and find more balance in their life through the process of self-development. So, let's get into it. What's up, guys, and welcome back to the podcast. On this episode of the podcast, we're actually celebrating number 150, which is crazy to me to believe that it's been going on that long. And I still do enjoy putting out every single podcast, I have to say. It's something that I look forward to. I like recording the episodes. I like editing them. Even though I don't edit them that much realistically, I just cut out the spaces in between the words. And it's a very enjoyable process. I much prefer this over Instagram and social media. So in terms of my social side of things, this is the game that I enjoy the most. But on this episode of the podcast, I want to talk a small bit about what I'm at the moment, just to give the people, the listeners, or anyone who listens in on a weekly basis, a better idea of what it's like to live the life. Because a few people kind of mentioned it to me that it'd be an interesting subject to go into, on the life of a digital nomad or a traveling nomad. Now, I'm sure on Instagram you often see people in Bali and people in tropical islands posting pictures of them on the beach with a coconut, sunsets, all that. It's all definitely a beautiful side to the life, and I did it myself because I was out in Bali for a good while. But there's a lot more to it as well. I think it's not just about the social credit that people get. I think a lot of people do this to get more socially from it, and I will go in and talk about that in a bit more detail. About, like, I often meet people here and they say, oh, I'm a digital nomad, and I say, oh, nice, what are you doing, or what do you work at, is whatever, and they say, obviously I work online and this is what I do. How long are you here? I'm here for a week, and then I go to the next place for a week. And if you watch their stories, then it's all just winning, all the things that they win. So I don't think it's a true reflection of what it's like to be when you're on the road and you are trying to work or run a business at the same time. I think oftentimes people get the wrong impression of what it's like. So I want to try talk a small bit more about what it is actually like, what it's like for me, and why do I do it. And there's a lot of positives to it, and there's a lot of, obviously, there's negative sides to it. As with anything, there's always that balance. So to start out, I guess I want to talk about, for anyone who doesn't know, I'm living in Argentina at the moment, in Buenos Aires. And before this, I would have lived in Spain. I was in Tenerife, and funny enough that I mentioned that about Bali, I was in Bali then for a good while before that. So I have definitely come across many of the influencers that you would often see posting pictures of themselves on beaches and by waterfalls. And I definitely wouldn't call myself an influencer by any means, but I was probably one of those as well, that I did post that at times. And something that there's definitely merit to doing it. It's enjoyable. You get your pictures. But as I said, some people are doing that for a social credit, which is not what you're looking to do when you're living this lifestyle, especially if you're doing it longer term. So when I look at why do I travel, and I actually had to journal on this a good bit before starting the episode, because I wanted to give a kind of a true reflection of what it's like. And I wanted to give a better representation of why each person does it individually and why it suits some people and why it doesn't suit other people. And one of the main reasons I think that I really enjoy moving and trying to live in a new place and set up in a new place is, as at this time of my life, I really enjoy change. I really enjoy, like, trying something new, going into the kind of unknown and trying to figure a way out of it. And I've often talked about this on the podcast of, you do need to, not that you do need to, but I think it is nice to throw yourself in the deep end of something and figure your way out of it, because it gives you a level of confidence in yourself, and it builds your, I suppose it helps you develop yourself in ways, helps me develop myself in ways. And really, when I look at why I do this, I grew up in a small, tiny village with a population of about 400 people in North Clare in Ireland. And just to give people an idea, the closest shop to me to buy anything, milk or anything like that, is about 10 kilometers away. So it was out in the middle of nowhere. But I lived in a pub out there, and I do still live in the pub, even though it's not open as much anymore. But I used to meet a lot of people coming in and out. They often talked about their experiences, their adventures, and the places that they went. And they also talked about the stories. And I think that was something to me that really resonated with when I was growing up. I wanted to maybe move outside of the small area that I was living in and experience a bit more of the world. And my parents as well would have met in the States and would have traveled to different places and lived in different places. Obviously a different style or lifestyle, because the online work wouldn't have been as available back then. But the development, or the personal development associated with it, I think is huge. Now, you can get this from anywhere. I think I have talked about this on the podcast a lot before, about how the personal development side of things, it can happen with anything. You just need to put yourself outside a routine a small bit. But when I look at my situation right now, there's certain skills, certain experiences, and certain elements of the unknown that I want to assess and I want to get into. And I also want to realize like what other cultures do, why they do it, and how they do it in a lot of ways. It gives you a new perspective. When I look back on the different places that I have been over the years, I lived in California for, I know it's a funny enough place to be living, but I was there for in San Francisco for a small while, about 3 or 4 months. In Berkeley really is what I was, J1 style kind of idea. And then I was in San Diego then after that, a couple of years later. And then I was in St. Louis as well, for a college exchange. And I wasn't exactly working online. I was in San Diego. I was working online, but this was a huge thing for me. This is when I really started to notice that when you're in a certain country, or when you're in a place, there's perspectives that are in an area or in a place that you don't realize. And when you talk to people or when you meet people outside, you can see why they have a certain perspective. And it's because of obviously the news that they are fed and the people that they talk to, but a lot of it comes down to values. And this has been a really interesting side of, for me, the beliefs and values that people have. Because with the type of people that I work with, especially when you have like a persistent pain or a chronic pain, a lot of that comes down to your values and your perspective. And I think that was something that I became more aware of when I was traveling. Because when I went to the States, I had a completely different mindset. When I came back to Ireland again, I was like, wow, a different way of looking at things. But I wouldn't have ever got that if I hadn't had left it before. There's definitely a way of thinking bigger when you go to the States, I feel. Now, obviously, there's positives and negatives to that, but there's definitely an element of when you go to the States, and when you go, especially from a business perspective, there's an idea that there's a freedom there that you can do whatever you want. I know people hear about them talk. You often hear people say it, or people from America often talk about the freedom that they have there, but it's really ingrained in the culture. And that was something that I really noticed when I was over there. When I came back to Ireland, then people are a lot more conservative in their beliefs. And you don't notice that until you go out and you leave the area that you're in, and then you come back in again. Now, obviously, not everywhere is the same. But that was one thing that I picked up from going over to the States, was that idea of that it's definitely a faster paced lifestyle. People are thinking bigger in a lot of ways, and maybe a small bit more liberal. Now, Ireland has changed in the last couple of years. The reason I wanted to go into that side of things is that it does show you that without going outside of your community or outside your circle, there'll be certain beliefs that you have that are ingrained that you will live out the rest of your life based off those beliefs. And there's nothing wrong with that either. There's nothing wrong with having that and having those beliefs and values. But for me and from my perspective right now, I want to broaden it. And I think that traveling is an easier way to kind of force yourself into that situation. Now, what do I want to get from it, or what do I want to take from it? It does come back to that idea. It's nothing too specific, I don't feel. And when you look at the nomad lifestyle, you're obviously balancing work with the lifestyle that you want to live, or the traveling side of lifestyle. So it's not exactly as what you see, where it's not the same as going on holiday where you go and where you just sit out on a beach and you drink every day and then you come back and you get back into work. It's a small bit different because you obviously have to balance both sides of it. But as I said, I want to experience new places. I want to experience new cultures and then the people that are in those cultures, as well as that, as testing myself. So it's nothing that I'm not going to take something from it specifically, as opposed to just being immersed in it and then seeing what happens to me along the way. But as I said, people can do this from any situation. You can do this from just changing up your routine at home. You can do that by, when I was journaling, one thing that came up for me was, even though right now I'm looking for new perspectives and I'm looking for new experiences and looking for a richness outside of the area that I'm from, I could still live in the same area and still find the same level of richness and the same level of new experience and new life, but it'd be in a different way. It'd be more so towards the nature, the environment, leaning more into the culture of it. So I feel that I will, when I'm older and I'm settling down a small bit more, that I will come back to that. But right now I feel that I'll get more from being away from it. So it's not that I'm trying to take anything specifically. I'm just trying to go in the deep end and see what happens. And trying to enjoy the uncomfortableness of it all is definitely a thing, because it does look, especially when you look at people's Instagrams, that everything is perfect and everything falls into place. But that's not what it's like. That's a very unrealistic representation of what living like a nomad is, because there's a lot of figuring out new systems, figuring out the way people act, what's accepted and what's not accepted in different places, and just how certain people live their lives dependent on the environment and the community that they're from. So trying to enjoy the uncomfortableness of figuring that out and then trying to make the uncomfortable comfortable is a huge part of it as well for me. Now in Argentina specifically, why did I choose this? A lot of people ask me. I did do a podcast on it, so much more so before. Here, I think I could focus in on a few more specific things that I want to develop on. So although I'm not trying to, as I said, I'm not looking for anything too specific from the experiences or from the whole lot, there is certain elements of skills that I would like to develop. And one of those is continuing to develop jiu-jitsu. For me, is a huge part of my life right now. It's a skill that I really enjoy. It's an atmosphere that I love being in. I love the competitiveness of it, and I love the idea that it's a long-term skill that needs to be developed. So anyone that listens to this podcast knows that I've talked about this extensively in the past. The other things then is like learning the language of learning Spanish. Now, I could do this at home if I wanted to, but I wouldn't be as immersed in it, and I wouldn't be using it as much. Now, this is something that, even though it is an experience I'm after, I've probably been putting to the side a small bit too much because of my routines and the way I've been living. I haven't needed to test it as much as I haven't. I'm kind of coming to the realization now that I probably need to break outside of the routine that I have to test that a bit more, because I kind of know what I have to say in certain situations, and now that's limiting my development even further. So I know, unfortunately, even as I'm doing this podcast now, it's coming to light that I will have to step with myself in the uncomfortable again with the language side of things. And the way to do that, obviously, there's a lot more ways of breaking that routine and having new experiences to do that. But yeah, it's coming to the forefront now that I probably will have to get to the next level. That's going to be the next thing I'm going to have to do. Otherwise, in this country, I love to meet the people. There's a nice mix of people here. Like, you have the South American element, and then there's also the European and kind of the global element as well. It's definitely a universal city. And although it is as I said, a universal city or a European city, I want to have a base in South America at the moment while I learn the language, while I develop my jiu-jitsu, and while I kind of explore the continent a bit more. And I feel that this area right now, because of everything it has to offer, is an excellent area for me. Could be different for someone else. I know a lot of people go to Colombia as well, and then obviously Brazil. But the thing about Brazil is I would love to move to Brazil, but I have to then try learn a new language again, which I'm struggling enough with the first one. So the second one, I don't need to get into that just yet. I will, but not just yet. Give me time. Now, as I said, having a base in South America is going to be huge. Otherwise, like the food here, the culture. I'm a huge meat eater. I love it. And the availability of steak and meat here is like nothing I've ever seen before. It's crazy. It's a, it's a huge part of the diet for me anyway. Now, one of the last ones is that I wanted to be away from let's say everyone that I wanted to be away from my community, for say. Now, although I do have friends out here, and I have friends who are passing through as well, I think that trying to go and set up in a new place by myself to figure it out was a big part of the reason that I moved here. And I didn't really know anyone living out here. I didn't know anyone actually, to be honest, living in Argentina when I came out here. And that was a big part of the reason that I moved out here. Because I felt a lot of the places that I would have went in the past, I would have either known somebody there or known somebody who was going to be there. So it wasn't that much of an issue for me. And I was able to very quickly get into the routine. And they were also English speaking, a lot of them. So that made it a lot easier. So I think that was another part, was kind of disconnecting from the community. I still obviously in contact with all my family and friends, but I wanted to try set up by myself in a place and just get my routines down so I can work on the things that I want to work on. There's a lot of, even though there's an element of loneliness to that, of moving away and being by yourself in a place, there's also an element of you don't have any distractions and you can really hone in on things. You can really dive deep on something. And that's a huge part of it for me. Like, I don't really go out that much anymore. I've been kind of very focused on routine. Is it something I'm going to do forever? I don't really know yet. I think that I don't feel it's going to be something I'll do forever. I hope that I can continue to travel even periodically throughout my life. But I do understand when I start a family that things are going to have to change, or they may have to change. Be very specific on the language there. They may have to change. I do see myself settling down, though, at some stage and kind of using that as a different base. I don't know where yet, but I can see that probably will come into the play at some stage. And being away from family and friends is definitely very tough at times, I have to say. Just even sitting down, eating with your family, going for walks around the local area, going out, chatting to my grandmother, chatting to my mates. Playing football is a huge one. Playing GAA is a massive one with my local team. And yeah, just hanging out at home. I think that they're things that you really miss. But I think there's an element to appreciating those things that bit more when you're away from them. I really do. I think there's definitely that element to it, because you often don't realize what you have, or you don't. It's a lot more difficult to be grateful for things when they're there all the time. I think that's a big part of it, because everything comes so familiar to you, so that you don't really, like, you can obviously practice your gratitude and that, but you don't, I feel a lot of times you don't really become grateful for things when they're around you all the time. And when you disconnect and you go away, even for a day or a couple of days, then you notice, all right, that's something that I really do enjoy doing. Or even that's just a community that I like to be around. I think that's another big one, is that it's oftentimes you forget how the little things make such a big difference. What's up, guys? Robbie here. I hope you are enjoying the podcast so far. I want to take a moment just to personally ask you for your help. If you're enjoying the podcast, would you be willing to share it with someone you think would love it too? Maybe a friend, family member on social media, or even if you just brought it up in conversation with someone you know. The recommendation means the world to us, and it's because of people like you that we get to be able to produce this podcast on a weekly basis. So thank you so much for your support so far, and I would love if you could help us reach even more people who could benefit from it too. Really appreciate you, and we're going to jump straight back to the podcast. But it's part and parcel. You have to have your positives and your negatives. So I guess the next progression is, what do the days look like of somebody who is working online and living away from home? Well, my days are, to be honest, if you looked at what people's Instagrams are like when they're being a digital nomad, and if you looked at my life of being a digital nomad, you would say they couldn't be further apart. That it's actually, you probably consider my lifestyle extremely boring unless you were interested in things that I was interested in. But I do love a good routine. So you can take the man away from home, but some things don't change. I love a good routine. I try to get up early. I spend a bit of time getting ready in the morning, I have a nice routine of doing a bit of meditation, and then I go reading, and I'll try to do a small bit of movement. And then it's actually I start getting into work that bit more. Now I'll work up to lunch. I'll generally go out for lunch at a place close by, go to jiu-jitsu, come back, do a little bit more or meet friends for a coffee, dinner, play a little bit of guitar, study in the evening, nothing crazy, watch a lot of UFC recently, or watch fights, but my studying is definitely around language, studying jiu-jitsu, and then studying obviously health and physiotherapy and trying to develop like how to develop patterns and develop systems to improve chronic pain issues. That's the basis of my day. There's I'm in a portion of my traveling phase right now that I'm working on projects more. So I have to be more disciplined. I can't just be here jumping around, going to loads of different places, planning all these trips. Even though it seems like when you think about that's what it's like to live away, that's what a lot of people think is going to happen, is that you're just always going around and you go to a place and then every weekend you go away and that. For me, anyway, I much prefer the routine of it. I'm here for 7 months now already. So the initial phase of going out, going to parties, going drinking, all that, has kind of weaned off a small bit. I'm not as interested in doing that right now. Trying to be a bit more disciplined, as I said. Now, I guess like a natural question is it difficult to juggle that business and pleasure? I'm able to switch on and off when I want to, but I do love the game, and I do love learning the learning aspects of owning a business, and I really do love. So the other thing is that I'm lucky to love what I do. That's a huge part of it. So I don't really count business and pleasure as two different things, because if I'm being productive and I'm getting things done, I can still go and meet friends at coffee, and I can still go and train, go to jiu-jitsu, go to new places, and it's not that big of an issue. I can switch off whenever I want to, but I'm definitely becoming more aware of knowing now when I'm in a phase and when I'm not. And as I said, right now I'm in more of a routine phase. At the start, I wasn't really in a routine phase. I was jumping around, I was going out, I was probably not getting as much work done as I should have been doing, but I was still getting everything that I needed to get done. But right now, I was still doing trips, let's say before. I was going to different places, different cities or different areas around the place and seeing new things. But now it's a bit more routine. So when you do something you love though, and it's such a phrase that's thrown around, when you do something you love, but when you actually do it, when you do something that you enjoy, that you look forward to doing, it becomes a lot easier. You don't have to juggle that pleasure in life. If I'm sitting down on a trip, I'll still be doing a bit of journaling on like how can I, like what's a good habit, or what's a good tactic, or what's a good strategy to overcome a certain issue or certain injury. I'll often do that. I'll often be thinking about that. I'll often be thinking of how could you change the belief on something, or how can you work on that value or express a value something in a different way with a client, because it is something that I'm enthralled, like it's something that I really love doing. So it's not a massive mix of business pleasure. I think that idea is definitely like the idea of get up, go to work and finish up and then live your life in the hours of 5 to 9 is not something that I want to do. And I've tried to create a lifestyle that I don't have to do that based off of what I like. And that's something, if there's one thing that I would push for people as much as possible to try get that freedom back, that you can work on the things that you do enjoy as much, because it just becomes a lot easier. Now, I'm going to finish up soon enough, but I want to talk about, because someone asked me, how do you adapt to new places? This is a cool one, I think, because the more you do it, the better you get at it, like with anything. But it's still always a deep end when you get in there. It's never that you're going to go, everything's going to land perfectly, unless you have organized some type of a concierge service that's going to get everything ready for you. But that gets rid of half of the joy and half of the fun of doing it. Adapting to a new place is half of the fun. Trying to figure it out is so enjoyable. You start off, for me, getting your bearings. You know where your house is, and you know the couple of blocks or parks or whatever around your house. And once you get to understand your surroundings, then you can start to create these little routines, so that For me, on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I eat at a certain place. Tuesday and Thursday, I change it up. Saturday and Sunday, I also have 2 separate places that I go to. I'll go to a certain park at a certain day, and I go for a different walk on another day. I'll go to the gym on one day, I'll go to jiu-jitsu another day. Like, the stuff that I do is they're all like little mini routines. And then once you've created these little mini routines, you can start to test the water a bit. So you can change it up. You can walk a different way. You can explore a new area. You can try a new restaurant. You can go to a new bar. I think that's, once you start to get an idea of it, that becomes a lot easier because you have your mini routine. If you don't like it, you come back to your little mini routine. It doesn't have to be crazy. I go down, I won't even go into the details of the routines that I have because they'd be boring for a lot of people, but like, I know exactly where I get my food, where I top up my phone, where I get my water, all of the little things. I have all these little mini routines, and I've slowly but surely built other routines around that. On a Wednesday, if I go to jiu-jitsu, I will also go to Western Union to get my cash and come back. And I think that's the easiest way to adapt to new places. Is start off, get a knowledge of the area, understand your surroundings. Once you have your little routines of where you like to go, then you start to test out the waters. One big thing for me is meeting the same locals consistently, because they will give you a better understanding of where to go and what to do. So when you test the waters, you're not going crazy and testing them, that it's more of a guided test. I think that's a big one, is starting to meet the locals and chat to them about their own life and their family, and as you would, like, just develop relationships, because it does really help you. And it helps you when you get stuck with something. If you're looking for an answer for something, or if you need to go to the hospital. I actually ended up having to go to the hospital here because I got sick with it, basically, from overtraining and doing jiu-jitsu, and I got a staph infection, and then the staph infection went to a bursitis, and then I got sepsis, and it was a stupid routine. It was my own fault, but I take responsibility for it. But I had to go to the hospital, but it was lucky that I had met someone who told me where to go, told me where they spoke English, told me exactly, like, if you look for this doctor, they speak English. Just simple little things like that was a huge help to me. And I think if I hadn't had met these people, that would have been a much more arduous process, which would have been a bollocks. But I got it sorted anyway. So I think that's a huge one. Once you develop your routines, once you meet the same locals, once you meet the same people, these things become a lot easier. What are the plans for the future then? As in now, nothing crazy. I know for the next few months I'm going to be staying in this routine, this kind of development phase, or this development season, before breaking out of it. I have my goals set and my plans of when I'm going to change it up. I still do feel I'm in a honing phase of the skills that I've decided to work on. And whether that be, let's say, learning a language, jiu-jitsu, business side of things, I'm developing a course. I have the course made, let's say, Spine Initiative, for anyone who's dealing with persistent back pain. But I'm going to continue to develop that for the next few months while I'm putting people through it, and really, really hone in on that and make it as effective as possible. Just a quick plug, it helps people if you're dealing with back pain and you want to get back to running a 5K or want to get back to exercising. It starts you from 0 to exercise in 6 weeks. That's the basis of the program. Now, I digress. So I'm going to be working on that for the next while people are going through it at the moment, so I can continue to develop it. And then even after that, take a break, and then I'll come back and I'll do it again. After that, though, I don't really have too many plans. I kind of want to, as I said, I do want to explore South America a bit more. I do want to get to know the area that bit more. I have found that I'm able to balance life as, let's say, working online and life of living. The life of living, is that even a way of saying it? But the life of actually making sure that I have a good lifestyle at the same time. So you never know, in a couple of months I may just, because I'm doing all this and I've really been building for the last year and a half, I may just disappear, just go away for a small while, head into the Amazon, live with an uncontacted tribe. No, I wouldn't. Jesus, that'd be crazy. I come back, could you imagine what I come back out of it like? But yeah, I don't really know what I'm going to do. after that. I'm still an open book. Any suggestions? Let me know. But as I said, yeah, we might take a bit of a break from everything for a small while and then see how it goes. But it does come back to finish on the point of why is it that we travel, and why is it that we like to explore new places, and what is the life like as a digital nomad or a traveling nomad, whatever you want to call it. And it is, for me, it's a very suitable lifestyle. It's a very good lifestyle for me right now because I'm able to manage my routines and I'm able to still experience new places. It's not for everyone though, I don't feel. I know a lot of people who've tried it and haven't liked it. There's definitely a lot more risk involved in it because you're in new places, you have to try new things, you have to put yourself out there a small bit more. And for some people, they're not as keen at doing that right now. And I understand that. I understand that not everyone has had the same experiences in the past, or not everyone has the same perspective or values the same things, has the same belief systems. And I do appreciate that as well because it's important. If everyone had the same idea, imagine a boring world we would live in. But it is important to test those theories, is all I would say. If you do have a certain belief, if you do have a certain value, are you expressing it enough? If you're yearning to go traveling, why don't you just pack it up and leave? If you have enough confidence in yourself, it's obviously becomes more difficult when you get a family. But if you have enough confidence in yourself that you can go away for, like, how long do you have to go away for? Is a week good for some people? Do you want a month? Do you want to go for 3 months at a time? Are you able to organize something with your job that you can go away for a couple of months and try it out? And it might be that you just dip your toes in it. You don't go anywhere too far. And that you're able to get back if needed. But I think there's a lot to be gained from it. And I hope for the rest of my life that I'll continue to learn, try to broaden my perspective. And I think that's a value that I'm really trying to develop. Because I think with values and with belief systems and with the way we think, it's a continuous process. And anyone that feels that, or if you ever feel like you're stuck in a way of thinking, the only way you can change that is oftentimes getting outside of your community, getting outside the people that you know, and changing your environment. To finish on a quote, I think it's a quote that sums it up very well, from the famous chef Anthony Bourdain. He said that travel isn't always pretty. It isn't always comfortable, and sometimes it hurts. It even breaks your heart. But that's okay, because the journey changes you, and it should change you. It leaves marks on your memory and on your consciousness and on your heart and even on your body. You should take something with you, and hopefully you leave something good behind. I think that sums it up perfectly. But for now, that's everything I'm going to chat about today. I hope that you enjoyed the podcast. And yeah, let me know if you need anything. Let me know if I can help you out with anything. As I said, that course is out at the moment. It's spineinitiative.com. You can check the description to get access to it. If you or someone you know is dealing with back pain and wants to get back to exercise, it's the perfect place to start. That's all from me, and I will chat to you all again next week at the same time. We're at episode 150 right now, and we'll keep pushing on. That's all from me, and I will chat to you all again at the same time next week. Have a good one. Okay guys, thank you so much for listening to today's podcast. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you're looking to learn more about what we do, as well as check out any of the mobility and rehab programs we have available, just head over to the description of this podcast and you will find a link to all the programs there. As always, thank you for listening, and I will chat to you all again in the next episode. Have a good one.